and let us all do we can to build a better future.
I guess it's okay to talk about it now. I guess it's okay to say his name. But I find it odd now that the media is acting in this nature. You see, for a long time, corporate media, be it the bigwigs at The Guardian, The New York Times, Washington Post, and all other larger media outlets, including those in cable television such as CNN, MS or BSDNC, I mean MSNBC, ABC, CBS, have been vilifying and forgot Fox News, have been vilifying whistleblowers, journalists, people who speak truth to power, people who've called out those who abuse power. Now, I said so on this show that freedom of speech is fundamental to our democracy. We need it. We need to have a media networks, journalism in general, to challenge the establishment, to hold those in power accountable for their actions, even if they're your most favorite politician in the world. And as we all know, my correct fact, and it is a correct fact about these jagoff politicians, they don't like us, they don't think about us, they don't respect us. And the same people who own our politicians control our media. It's all about the dollars. Remember, Wall Street, the big banks, corporations, the top 1%, hedge fund managers, you see, they get the politicians to write the rules and regulations to benefit them because they're the number one constituents. And if you are a Democratic or Republican voter, well, you're a really good sucker and a victim of domestic abuse. That's a fact. If you vote Democrat or Republican, I'm going to look at you as a person wearing shades covering up your black eye. That's a fact. But the thing is now, something interesting has happened, in which I have to say it's very suspicious. And I'm building up to it. Why? Let me share this link with you guys and gals from the journalistic outlet called The Guardian, because I guess it's safe now. Publishing is not a crime. Media groups urge the U.S. to drop Julian Assange charges. Hey, media, you're like really, really late in the game, but okay. But here's why I find it suspicious, though. You see, what the vote blue no matter who crowd, the liberal brunch people, I'm going to call them out specifically for this because they were so triggered of how 2016 went down. They were just so perturbed. They wanted to blame everyone and everything, from Bernie Sanders, who in all reality is a cuck, Jimmy Dore. They wanted to blame Jimmy Dore. Susan Sarandon had absolute power. I mean, Susan Sarandon, when will your reign of terror end? And then, of course, they kept on going after Julian Assange. Now, he is a journalist and a publisher. And the thing is, again, all these media outlets, or everyone, especially the Vote Blue no matter who crowd, forgets is that 12 years ago, The Guardian, The New York Times, Le Monde, the Spielberg, El Paris collaborated to release excerpts from 250,000 documents obtained by Assange in the Cablegate leak. The material leaked by WikiLeaks by then American soldier Chelsea Manning exposed the inner workings of U.S. diplomacy around the world, which is code word for crimes. War crimes. War crimes. War crimes. That's what happened. And now they're asking that the U.S. government must drop its prosecution of the WikiLeaks co-founder, as it's undermining press freedom. Huh. So let's have democracy in the chat. I know it's a controversial statement. I know if it offends you, the word democracy, I'm sorry, because I don't even know what that is. But let's have democracy in the chat. Do you believe in the sincerity of these media outlets that are calling for the U.S. to drop charges against Julian Assange? Type 1 if you believe their sincerity. That maybe they see the bigger picture. Maybe. This is a big maybe. They see the bigger picture. Type 2 if this is just all smoke and mirrors and this is just something for them to just cover, talk about, and maybe, I don't know, they'll just kind of just forget about it later on down the road, that that's not authentic at all. Let's have real democracy. Type 2. There you go, folks. Because again, it's just madness. Yep, I'm seeing a whole lot of 2s. A whole lot of 2s already. But again, audience, this is important because there's been so many hit pieces against Julian and his family. against WikiLeaks. So many. The man has been tortured in Belmarsh prison, a high security prison, maximum security prison, to be precise. Separated from his wife, his two children, their two children. Apologies for that. Their two children. His mother, his father, his brother, his friends, his co-workers. I mean, honest to God, he is the example of what it means to be a journalist. I don't know if I could ever go through what he has gone through. And before you see all the quote unquote liberal blue checkmark people maybe jumping on board on this bandwagon of telling the US to drop the charges against him, I would say this. None of those journalists in CNN or MSNBC or Fox or New York Times or The Guardian could even go through a fraction of what he has gone through. That even goes for outlets like TYT or Majority Report. They couldn't do it. They've been awfully silent. Hey, but now that the New York Times is doing it, I wonder when Fat Tony and his fantastic friends are going to jump on board and say, oh, yeah, he should be freed. But even though they did a video smearing him, shout out to Jimmy Dore for capturing that video. But democracy is fundamentally important. And if he is extradited here, I'm not wrong in this statement. It is the final nail in the coffin for freedom of speech, journalism, whatever you want to call it here in America now. He has gone through enough. He has suffered enough, and he must go home. And so many other brave media outlets have been covering this. Shout out again to the Convo Couch, Jimmy Dore, so many others. We have Frank Analysis, Slow News Day, Taylor Hudak, so many people at the Indie News Network. There we go. Again, I could list names here all day, but they know who they are. They know who spoke out against corruption and the abuses that happened to this man. Now the media is talking about this, and they wrote this letter. So here's a full statement from them. 12 years ago, on November 28, 2010, 5 international media outlets, the New York Times, The Guardian, Le Monde, Le Paris, Der Spiegel, published a series of revelations in cooperation with WikiLeaks that made the headlines around the globe. Cablegate, a set of 251,000 confidential cables from the U.S. State Department, disclosed corruption, diplomatic scandals, and spy affairs on an international scale. In the words of the New York Times, the documents told the unvarnished story of how the government makes its biggest decisions that cost the country most heavily in lives and money. Even now in 2022, journalists and historians continue to publish new revelations using a unique trove of documents. For Julian Assange, publisher of WikiLeaks, the publication of Cablegate and several other related leaks had the most severe consequences. On April 12, 2019, Assange was arrested in London on U.S. arrest warrant and has now been held for 3.5 years in a high-security prison, usually used for terrorists and members of organized crime groups. He faces extradition to the U.S. and a sentence up to 175 years in an American maximum security prison. The group of editors and publishers, all of whom had worked with Assange, felt the need to publicly criticize his conduct in 2011 when unredacted copies of the cables were released, and some of us are concerned about the allegations in the indictment that he attempted to aid in computer intrusion of a classified database. But we come together now to express our grave concerns about the continued prosecution of Julian Assange for obtaining and publishing classified materials. So again, felt the need to publicly criticize his conduct in 2011. Okay, so again, remember that. A lot of them probably got a phone call. That's what people forget. The Obama-Biden administration. Hey, Obama-Biden administration. Interesting. In office during the WikiLeaks publication in 2010, refrained from indicting Assange, explaining that they would have had to indict journalists from major news outlets too, which I find interesting because the Biden-Harris administration wants him extradited. I wonder. The position placed a premium on press freedom despite its uncomfortable consequences under Donald Trump, the Orange Cheeto. However, the position changed. The Department of Justice relied on an old law, the Espionage Act from 1917, which is, again, if he is prosecuted and sent here, comes with death, too. I know, it's an antiquated law. Again, Julian Assange is not an American citizen, so there you go. This indictment sets a dangerous precedent and threatens to undermine America's First Amendment and the freedom of press. Better late than never, guys, right? Obtaining and disclosing sensitive information, when necessary in the public interest, is a core part of the daily work of journalists. If that work is criminalized or public discourse or democracies are made significantly weaker, 12 years after the publication of Cablegate, it is time for the U.S. government to end its prosecution of Julian Assange for publishing secrets. Publishing is not a crime. All the editors and publishers of those 5 media outlets that should have been heavy hitting the minute he was dragged out of that Ecuadorian embassy in London. I want to pull this tweet up here for all of you to see because it's important. This was retweeted out by Jimmy Dore, but of course the original tweet is from the United Nations of all places. War is peace, freedom is slavery, ignorance is strength, censorship is safety. And why? Because here the United Nations says words can be weapons. Hate speech online can lead to cruelty and violence in real life. Get tips of how to say hashtag no to hate. But yet journalists are still being prosecuted. Journalists are still being censored. So, yeah, okay, I get it. No to hate. Hashtag no to hate. It's an all right hashtag, I guess, if you want to just tweet it out and feel good about yourself. But at the end of the day, you need to remember that journalism and freedom of speech is being censored at a pace which we've never seen before. So let's look at a way to end this story, at least somewhat on a positive note. Julian Assange needs to be freed. We are all him, and he has suffered enough. And the fact that this is happening, the extradition is happening under a Democratic administration, well, I guess all their words about protecting journalists and freedom of speech is just that. Only words. So vote blue no matter who, crowd. Are you guys now going to cancel The Guardian and the New York Times after their editors published that letter? Probably not. They're going to go right back to brunch, getting fat and lazy, crying about Trump.